As you guys know, I've talked about so many Disney Channel shows and their stars, but what about Nickelodeon? Remember the time Nickelodeon almost had a world-renowned boy band on their hands? Big Time Rush. If you guys know, you know. At one point, One Direction was Big Time Rush's opener. This means there was a timeline where Big Time Rush was way more popular than One Direction, which is honestly a little bit hard to believe considering everything that's happened, including the One Direction solo careers that honestly make the Big Time Rush solo careers seem like child's play. We're going to be talking about how Nickelodeon may have mishandled Big Time Rush, and we're also going to compare their journey to other boy bands like One Direction and Jonas Brothers, specifically the Jonas Brothers, because I feel like the Jonas Brothers is a good example of when you have a machine that tries to work with you rather than against you, at least in a large form. If you think about it, what Disney is to Jonas Brothers is what Nickelodeon is to Big Time Rush. Big Time Rush, the boy band, and the show came around in 2009. This means by this year, One Direction still hadn't necessarily been a real thing. I think a few months later, One Direction would officially be a boy band, I believe. Big Time Rush was launched by Nickelodeon via show, meaning their Nickelodeon show served as a launch pad to introduce us to them in their music and their personalities. However, as the show concluded in 2013, the band's trajectory took an unexpected turn. Unlike other networks that continued to support their musical acts post-show, i.e. Miley Cyrus, i.e. the Jonas Brothers, i.e. Selena Gomez, Demi Lovato, even at the time Hilary Duff, Nickelodeon's backing of Big Time Rush seemed to waver. This lack of ongoing support by Nickelodeon left Big Time Rush honestly in the cold. In contrast, if we look at One Direction that formed in 2010 on the X Factor's UK, they didn't really have a scripted show to boost their careers. Instead, they relied solely on their music and personalities rather than scripted episodes to get to know them. Post X Factor, they received unwavering support from their management and record label, propelling them to a global stardom. This started with What Makes You Beautiful. I truly believe What Makes You Beautiful is such a trajectory for One Direction, and without that single blowing up, who knows what would have happened. Simon Cowell has had tons of boy bands that he's tried to follow the same formula. Just recently, an ex-boy band member of Pretty Much, a boy band that Simon Cowell created back in 2016, 2015, I believe even 2015, is when he created it. They came out saying that the reason why the label didn't want to continuously pour money into their boy band is because they were straight up told they didn't have a single that blew up like What Makes You Beautiful by One Direction, which is insane. This is crazy to think about because if a boy band from 2015, 2016 was being told this, what was Big Time Rush being told by Nickelodeon? When we look into the Jonas Brothers, which I actually think is a better comparison to compare to Big Time Rush, Disney Channel had the Jonas Brothers everywhere to the point where I could genuinely say the Jonas Brothers were already kind of famous without Disney, but Disney definitely put them in the eye of a younger audience that they needed. Hollywood Records was Disney Channel's label back then. There's a lot of music that's on there that they own, specifically a lot of the Miley, Hannah, Demi, Selena tracks, and they own a lot of the Jonas Brothers prior tracks. I believe SOS is owned by Hollywood Records, which is Disney's record company. In contrast to what Nickelodeon did for Big Time Rush, Disney Channel had Jonas Brothers everywhere, award ceremonies, they had extensive radio play. Meanwhile, Nickelodeon had Big Time Rush nowhere after the show's finale. And without Nickelodeon's promotional machine, Big Time Rush struggled to maintain the same level of visibility and relevance, impacting their ability to reach a broader audience outside of the show. A lot of people say it like this: Nickelodeon Music, which I believe is Nickelodeon's record label, they hold a lot of the songs like from Victorious and things of that nature. Nickelodeon was never going to use Big Time Rush to launch music. They used the show and just had songs along the way. That's what I truly believe. They never had a focus on music like Disney did with their stars. They just kind of used Big Time Rush as the acting scope. So if acting wasn't the way that these boys wanted to go, which is obvious, that's not where they wanted to, because almost none of them really did acting gigs after this, then Nickelodeon was a horrible platform to have them on. And Big Time Rush, the show and the band, would have been 10 times more successful if they were on Disney Channel. And I wholeheartedly believe that. Only because Disney Channel had the means and they had the confidence to support the TV shows as well as the music, and even the music they wanted to do after the show. Disney came up with some type of support for all of their artists after they were done being on Disney Channel. There's also talks of the rushed and messy ending of Big Time Rush, the show. It was one of Nickelodeon's biggest hits, running for 4 seasons, but instead of having a grand farewell like how Disney did for a lot of their stars, Nickelodeon instead threw together a final season and wrapped it up with almost zero hypes, in comparison to shows like Hannah Montana or Wizards of Waverly Place, which had a big send-off with emotional goodbyes. Big Time Rush, they barely got a tweet and they hardly ever really got reruns after the show was finished. And let's not forget how Nickelodeon treated their music careers. Unlike One Direction or the Jonas Brothers, who had the full backing of a major record label and the full support of Disney for Jonas Brothers, Big Time Rush was stuck under Nickelodeon's own label, meaning their albums and tours were controlled by a network that prioritized TV and not music. Big Time Rush's third album, 24/7, got little to no promotion, despite the fact that it had some of their best songs, We Are, Like Nobody's Around. Instead of them growing as artists, Nickelodeon kept them boxed in as TV stars who also sing, which made it harder for them to be taken seriously in the music industry. Technically, Big Time Rush were actors who sing on a show, and that's not what the boy band members actually wanted for themselves. In the journey of everything, through the tours, making the music, and meeting fans, they became a real boy band. To have a boy band like One Direction at one point opening for you means that you did have something, even if it didn't shine for as long. Big Time Rush had to fight for their own legacy. And even when they finally reunited in 2021, it was without Nickelodeon's help. This kind of proves that they did pretty okay for themselves. I too went to a Big Time Rush concert and it was actually pretty amazing. They did well, they were charismatic, a lot of personality, dancing, a whole production. The show was actually pretty amazing. And it's sad that we'll never know what could have been, because even with the new musical releases that they have now, it's very clear the sound that they once had that was written by Nickelodeon writers and soundtrack producers is no more. They're now a completely different boy band, which is great for them, but horrible for the people who knew them as Big Time Rush.